I'm Jay Horton. I make movies that make money, and this is Filmmakers On. Today, I'm talking to one of my oldest filmmaking acquaintances. I've been working with this guy pretty much ever since I came to LA. I think I did one movie without him. Started out as kind of a producer and has morphed into a very sought after independent special effects artist running Bravo FX. His name is Robert Bravo. How you doing, Robert?
I'm good, and yourself?
Good, man. Thanks for taking the time. Hey,
Yeah.
what's that dude you got over your right left shoulder?
Him?
The other guy, the big guy.
This guy.
Yeah, yeah, I can see him better.
He doesn't actually have a name. He was made for a short film, and it's a suit. And they had a different effects guy, and kind of took the money and ran. And the director was a friend of mine, and he said, "Look, I don't have much left. Can you help me?"
Right.
So he's pieced together out of a dancing leotard and couch upholstery. But looked good on camera, and that's all that mattered.
Right.
Yeah.
So even back when I first met you, and you started out and you were kind of helping me produce some movies, but like you always wanted to get into the special effects side of it, right?
Yeah. I like making things that can't exist, if that makes any sort of sense.
Hmm.
There's something to be said about drawing a picture of a dragon and then seeing your dragon walk around in the real world, which I think is it's a cool experience.
Prior to us working together, had you taken any steps to to learn the craft? Like, what were you?
I had, but it was really more of I didn't think it would go anywhere. I thought it was more just a hobby, I guess you'd say.
Hmm.
Um, but I was working with foam latex, which is kind of the standard, and mostly doing stuff to myself and Halloween parties and things like that. I might have done a couple of shorts before I met you, but I mean, I don't think I really had any interest in film. It was more just a weird art form that I liked.
For our movies, you were producing the movies. You knew a little bit about special effects, so you started doing special effects on those movies, like kind of a training ground, I guess, for you.
Yeah.
But like, how did you pursue the business, like after, say, Monsters in the Woods?
Well, as you may remember, there was a lot to learn on Monsters in the Woods, and so there was a pretty hardcore reset where I stopped for a little while. And the same thing happened after another movie we did called Hitchhiker. Excuse me, Hitchhiker Massacre.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. Um, where you kind of sit back and you look at what things didn't work and what things did. In Monsters in the Woods, I did a lot of blood and stuff, but we had some challenges, and so I kind of quit for a few months and went back to the drawing board and kind of learned things properly, as opposed to the wing it mentality that I think we had going into those early movies where we hadn't, well, you had gone to film school, I hadn't gone to film school, I hadn't really done anything proper. It was kind of more like, we have A and we have B, let's throw them together and make C.
Mm,
And that was a mentality that worked in a lot of ways. We got movies made, and I was 21 at the time. I don't know how many 21-year-olds can say they had features that were getting made and released, because we were doing things our way. We were stressed, and so I think afterwards I kind of reverted to a more proper methodologies and learning the right way to do things, if that makes sense.
How did you go about like learning things the proper way? Like, what's the route that you took?
I hooked up with legit artists. I hooked up with people who were doing it, and people who knew what they were doing, and just kind of, well, a lot of the times my job would be getting them coffee, but I'd be in the room while they were making a mold, or I would be assisting and holding bloodlines and watching them connect everything. And, little bit by little bit, I did a little more here, a little more there, and learned my way.
Right.
Um, And then, ironically, I actually taught a class on special effects before I took any proper schooling, which I think is hilarious.
What kind of stuff were you teaching?
Well, I taught. It's going to sound bad because I just kind of put down doing things wrong. But there's a quote unquote right way to do a lot of this stuff, and a lot of it's called the Dick Smith methodology. And Dick Smith was kind of the grandfather of special effects. He was the guy who did The Exorcist and a bunch of other really well-known things. It was the right way to do things, but a lot of the times on set, you can't really do it the right way. Either there's not enough money, there's not enough time, there's safety concerns, someone might have an allergy, so you've got to kind of flow with it. And so what I was teaching was a more organic way of, not mentally shutting down when things go wrong and being able to flow with the punches. So you come with plan A, which is the way you're supposed to do everything. But then, when you get to set and you find out, well, I know we had this conversation, but there's no electricity on the show. There's nowhere to plug in your airbrush. Well, what do? I can't just walk off set and say no. You still have expectations. So I kind of taught how to survive set life, if that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So what is set life like for a special effects artist? Like when you come onto set, like what's a typical day like on set for a special effects guy?
Very often, I'm the first to arrive, last to leave,
Mm,
because I get there 2, 3, 4 hours early. I get everyone into their makeup. If we're doing monsters like this guy, that's a 4 hour suit. He's on the mannequin now, so he looks a lot more solid. But there's pieces all over the neck. There's lots of stuff to glue on and paint. And I walk the actors through their lines, get everyone situated. Once they're in makeup, there's a little bit of hurry up and wait if camera is not set, but then I'll float around camera and studio village or video village, make sure everything is where it needs to be. Do corrections throughout the day. Then generally speaking, there'll be blood rigs or smoke rigs, whatever the case might be for that script. And you just kind of jump from job to job based on how complicated the script is and how many assistants you're able to bring on based on budget and logistics.
right. And so like you've done a lot of but you've worked on a lot of different projects,
Yeah.
commercials, movies, a lot of stuff. How do you find work? As a as an independent special effects artist working in independent film, how do you find work?
It kind of depends on circumstance. A lot of my work comes from actor referral. I'm kind of known as the guy who makes you feel safe in the chair. I think a big issue with a lot of special effects artists is we have a tendency to forget we're working on a person. The person we're kind of doing our makeup on turns into a canvas. You don't treat a canvas as nicely as you treat John or Susan. Actor referrals are a big deal, and doing a good job so you get director and crew referrals, big deal. And then there's your social medias. I wake up every day at 6 a.m. and I peruse all the Facebook groups, Mandy, and all that kind of stuff. And I've been doing this long enough that my name is just kind of in the ether, and I get phone calls saying, "Hey, are you available on this day to do this gag?" And scripts just magically show up these days. So
Do you find that special effects artists are one of the more like I don't know how to phrase this, put upon positions on a set? So like I know like a lot of sets you hear the sound guys complaining like they get it the worst, or your
um,
camera guys say they get it the worst. Do you feel like special effects artists
I
aren't
honestly don't, for a few reasons, but I think the most important thing is, unlike a lot of other departments, if we say it's not ready, it's not ready. If we kind of have a little bit of authority, and we're kind of based on safety. So if something's not where it needs to be, and I say, look, if we shoot it now the way it is, someone can get hurt. Production will listen. So because of that aspect, I really don't think that we're beaten up the way some of the departments are. I think the biggest challenge on set for a special effects artist is the hours. Um, my Before I say this, I'm non-union, so a union effects artist wouldn't have these kind of challenge. But my average day is 12 to 18 hours. Sometimes I've had a 35-hour day. Being able to survive that gamut is not always easy. But you take the good with the bad. Can I ask you what your experience is as a on the other side of directing with special effects and trying to survive that gamut.
Yeah, I think the trick for a filmmaker to work with a special effects artist, I think it's all about communication and expectations.
Right.
I think what happens, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think this happens a lot on independent films. Like the directors don't have a lot of experience working with different things, and especially in special effects. So they don't realize necessarily how long something takes. Like
Right.
they don't realize that they can't just say, "Hey, do this thing," and you can't just magically make it appear. So, I know initially, like I had some of that, and I
Yeah.
had, I basically had to be educated by different special effects artists. So, I guess, do you find that you have to educate filmmakers about like this is what it takes?
I do. I think the biggest thing is trying to get people to understand that it's going to look good from the angle it needs to look good at. I've had a couple of times where a director will walk out and say, "Well, that looks terrible." And you're like, "Yeah, but look through the camera lens." "Oh, that looks great." Okay. Um, there's, and this is the case in filmmaking in general. There's what it looks like on set, and there's the real world. And that can be very intimidating. It's like watching a rough cut of a feature. If you don't know what the end product looks like, it's outright scary because you're spending a lot of money. Oftentimes an effect. If you're on a feature film, let's lowball it and say you're spending $15,000 a day. If an effect doesn't look good, you wasted 7 hours of that day. You threw $7,000 away on that one setup, um, and that's being very, very cheap. So I think it's intimidating for a lot of filmmakers, and I do think there's a learning curve, and there's a lot of trust that has to go into it because you have to kind of just have faith that I know what I'm doing and that I have some understanding of what your vision is.
Right.
And a lot of the time that comes down to just pre-production, pre-production, pre-production. Lots of phone calls, sketches, sometimes even doing animatics, because I need to know exactly what the camera is going to see, so that it plays. Because as I said before, 99% of the time, it only really looks good from the angle the camera is going to see it.
And I remember working with you on earlier films, and you had a very like you're great to have on set. You had a very like people pleaser kind of attitude. But my question though is like, did you find like after our time together that constant wanting to please was kind of a hurdle?
Hindrance.
So yeah, yeah, and
Um,
why?
Both. It's a quality. I think it's important to show respect. And I still try to, especially with my actors. I make sure everyone feels safe. I make sure everyone's warm and fuzzy. If someone's in their suit, I, ask them every 20 minutes, "Do you need me to go get you a bottle of water?" Which, PA would normally do that. Um, so I still think it's important to make life for your team as comfortable as you can. What I've learned since then is the importance of the word no. Um, I think the biggest problem I had in those early days is, we'd have something where someone would say, "Hey, I know the script says I know someone's going to get shot with a bow and arrow, but can we decapitate them instead?" And I'd say, "Yeah, absolutely," with no plan on how to do that and no access to materials. And, the simple truth is, at the time, you think you're helping the production, but you're hindering everyone because if you just be honest up front and say, "Hey, I don't have the stuff. I got to do what we planned because otherwise it's not going to play." I'm going to save you time. I'm going to save me sanity, and everyone looks better in the end for it. So I think being a nice guy is not a problem. Being a nice guy who is afraid to let people down or say no is dangerous in the film industry.
And I think that's pretty good advice, regardless of your position. Not learning how to say no and setting
Yeah.
boundaries. Yeah,
And to follow up on that, learning your own self worth and how to say no to gigs, because no, everyone wants to take every job that pops up, especially early on. In my case, my average day on set cost me $300 to $600 baseline just out of materials I'm going to use because every quart of or every pint of silicone is 150 bucks.
mm,
So if someone says, "Hey, can you make 10 zombies and I'll pay you $100. Like back in the day, we all got jobs on Craigslist and it was all $150 days. Truth of the matter is I'm paying for the right to work for you. I'm spending my materials and I am paying to be hired. And that shouldn't be the case. Now, we all need to get experience and you can make conscious decisions, but it's important to think about your overhead and what the cost of that day is. Because, as important as it is to get on set and get those early, days, it's also important to pay your rent.
Right. Yeah, and speaking of rent paying, I would assume that just pretty much like any freelance, professional in filmmaking, there's good periods and bad periods,
Oh, yeah.
periods where jobs are just rolling in, periods where they're not. What are some within the industry, or like what are some different ways you can monetize like the stuff that you're doing,
Um,
besides working on a movie?
well, if you're on set and they're willing to work with you, if you can negotiate points, that's the first thing, because passive income is incredible.
Yep.
Special effects isn't a department that gets points a lot of the time, but you can negotiate budget where if the project only has so much money they can give you on your day rate, say, hey, that's $200 a day less than I normally accept, but I'll tell you what, can I take a half a point or a point and a half, whatever the case may be. And all of a sudden you start getting $20, $30, $50 checks in the mail or direct deposits, and you've made, your phone bill or some of your bills before you've even woken up.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And if you're fabricating, I make body parts and stuff, and productions always need rentals. Halloween people love to buy oddities and stuff. So if you work in a department where fabrication or art is a thing, you can create product to sell or rent or release into the atmosphere. But also, I think it's important to have outside skills. I cook, so if there's no work, I might move into catering. I do graphic art, so I make movie posters.
Yeah. Yeah. You've done a
Um,
few for me. Some good
yeah,
ones.
it's very important to have survival skills and survival instincts. Unfortunately, this is a cutthroat industry, and it's not uncommon to go 2-3 months without a job. And those are scary days. I think most filmmakers know there's a window between, say, the second half of November and February, March, where people just aren't shooting a lot. If you're union, a lot of TV shows go year round, but just if you're doing little indie features, you've kind of got to be able to get that bank account big enough to survive the dead zones. Either be willing to work a regular job, be good at saving money, or be prepared to hustle.
Well, it's like I noticed like within camera department, within sound department, there tends to be like a camaraderie amongst, like sound mixers or like camera operators. Is there like a sense of community amongst special effects artists?
There really is, and to an insane level. I almost feel more than other departments. I've had cases where I've had to do something where I don't even know where to start. I had to make teeth for a monster, big gnarly fangs.
Mm.
And I had never done dental work, and I had no idea. I called a manufacturer that specifically does monster teeth.
Mm.
I need something that you don't make. And I asked them originally if they can custom make something for me. And rather than take an order and try to custom make something for me, they spent 6 hours on the phone walking me through step by step how to basically take business from them. They taught me how to make these things, not because they were afraid of me hurting their business, but because they know the stronger practical effects artists get, the stronger our entire department gets. Because, if you remember in the dark ages, the early 2000s, everything was going very digital.
Mm.
And practical effects started getting weaker because practical effects artists weren't training as much. The individual artist strengthens the entire chunk of the industry. But also, we all talk. I admin all things practical on Facebook, and I have 35,000 special effects artists that I interact with in one form or another constantly.
What advice would you give to someone that's just like they love special effects? That's what they want to get into. That's what they want to do. Where do they start?
Um, well, there's a bunch of things that kind of need to be taken into consideration. Um, the first thing is it is a hard life, especially early on. You don't make it. It's weird. You make no money until the day when all of a sudden you start bringing in decent paychecks. Um, so have either a good chunk of savings put aside or be able to work a regular job, sought out information from professionals. I think one of the scariest things that's happening right now in special effects is there's all these YouTube tutorials, and a lot of them are teaching dangerous methodologies, and a lot of them are claiming to be professionals, and they're just people. And unfortunately, if you use some of these chemicals wrong, you could hurt, scar, or kill someone. Um, they're not toys, and so I think safety, uh, an unrealistic amount of common sense has to be utilized, like an insane amount of common sense.
Right.
Um,
So, like, you were just talking about the YouTube thing, and I've seen that in all different,
yeah,
milieus, people who really aren't experts talking like experts on a subject.
right.
Hopefully not me. But so where do people or where should people go to learn like the basics of the art?
Well, it's an interesting answer. Um, there are options on YouTube where you can learn. I think it's really you just need to filter things with when you're watching a video. Does that seem safe? Does that seem dangerous? Does this person have a standing in the industry? So it's not that you can't go to YouTube, but just find out if they're a professional, and it's easy enough to do a little homework. Um,
Check them out on
yeah,
IMDb or whatever.
yeah, IMDb is a wonderful resource. A plug for Stan Winston School of Character Arts is an online school that I adore. I've interacted with a couple of their teachers over the years, and everyone who's ever been involved with them is amazing. And shadowing people, not everyone can get on set and interact with professional effects artists, but if you're in Los Angeles, try to just, hey, can I hold your coffee and just be in the room while you work? A lot of effects artists are all about you know letting people hang out and learn and talk, but interacting with people who do this, I think, is the most important thing, and that way you can kind of float what's safe with someone who knows the world. And I also think it's important to kind of narrow in what part of special effects you want to do, because it's a very large subcategory of the industry. In special effects, you have a special effects technician, pyro, special effects makeup or special makeup effects, SFX, and then VFX, which is digital. So special effects it's a huge subcategory. And then all of those subcategories have subcategories. So do you want to do casualty simulation, which is gore? Do you want to do creature creation, like suits? Do you want to do character makeups, like bald caps in old age? And then tailor your initial learning based on the kind of effects you want to do. If your goal is to spend most of your time doing zombies and blood spray, you really don't need to have that strong of a foundation in character makeup and, say, beauty. And that way you can put your energy. I think a well-rounded artist should ultimately have all those skills, but initially target yourself for the world you want to be in, because otherwise you're going to spend a ton of money on stuff you don't really care about, and that gets really disheartening.
Right. And if I recall right, when you first started, you kind of started out in the kind of like the blood spray kind of
Yeah.
zombie effects, and you had the ambition to move into creature stuff, which you later did. What are some other things that you've transitioned into doing?
Um, I do a lot of fabrication now. Like I make silicone body parts. I do foam fabrication. So I make, all kinds of other goodies. Um, and I do life casting and make molds of actors. I do my own prosthetics. So I'm kind of a very small, incredibly indie effects house at this point. So I'm not just going to Nigel's, Friends Beauties, or other stores, buying stuff and figuring out how to make what I'm able to get hands on work, but I'm able to fabricate based on what the script needs.
Bravo. If people wanted to check out some of your work or find you, where can they track you down?
I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Robert Bravo. I think on Instagram I'm actually Robert M. Bravo. I have a website that's generally outdated, but I occasionally get it all updated and pretty, and that is www.bravofx.net. Probably the easiest ways to get a hold of me
Yeah.
and to see what I do.
Have you ever thought about, because there's so much false information out there, have you ever thought about as a potential side hustle, like doing some kind of tutorials or
I
something?
I do. The issue is, as you're well aware, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy,
It does.
and in this case, a lot of material.
Mhm.
So it's not that I don't want to. It's just I I need to mentally be able to clear that plate off,
Right, right.
and,
I mean, as far as the material goes, and I know a lot of projects sometimes, you're working under NDAs, you can't,
yeah.
show the stuff, but there's got to be situations where you could later,
Well, yeah,
film the thing now and release it after the movie comes out or something like that.
totally. And again, it's circumstantial, and honestly, a lot of the times it's not a matter of not wanting to; it's just not thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And no, no, this isn't me trying to pressure you into it. I was
oh,
just
I got
curious. All right,
the
man.
other issue is because a lot of the times I like to try to post when I'm sculpting, but I work to music, and social
Mm,
media doesn't like that. Whenever I post anything, they mute my videos, and a teaching video is not very functional when they take all my dialogue out because I'll have music playing in the background.
right. Yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Well, Robert, thanks so much for taking the time, and I will throw some links to your stuff in the description, and
Nice. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
yeah, definitely see you on the block.
Of course.